I'm Ariana Grande.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Erivo.
And you're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Visit bpn.fm to discover more.
Hi, I'm Matt Doyle, and welcome to the Theater Podcast with Alan Seals.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Theater Podcast with Alan Seals. That is me, and our guest today is Matt Doyle, a Tony Award-winning performer with an incredible journey. He shares some of the highs and lows of his career and the moments that shaped him, especially like starting out straight out of the gate with something like Spring Awakening, and of course just the reality of navigating the unpredictable landscape. But he opens up a lot about overcoming self-doubt, finding balance, and actually like the surreal pressure of performing, getting married today, from company, even on the night Stephen Sondheim passed away. It's an honest, heartfelt, and very hilarious deep dive into the life of an artist who has truly embraced every twist and turn that's been thrown at him. So don't forget to follow the show everywhere on socials, leave a review if you like it, and check out my Patreon or Spotify for the video version of this interview. And now everybody please enjoy this episode with Matt Doyle.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Today's guest won the 2022 Tony Drama Desk and Outer Critics Circle Award for Best Featured Actor in a Musical for his performance as Jamie in Broadway's revival of Company Ding Dong. He recently made his UK stage debut starring as Frank Sinatra in the world premiere of Sinatra the Musical. Broadway credits include the Tony-winning musicals Book of Mormon, Spring Awakening, and now Tony Award-winning Best Play Warhorse, and the revival of Bye Bye Birdie. Jesus. His off-Broadway credits include Little Shop, Sweeney, and Brooklynite, and he has performed at Carnegie Hall with the New York Pops, at symphonies across the country. He continues to headline sold-out solo shows throughout New York City and beyond. Is there anything else beyond New York? Of course there is. He can now be seen opposite Caroline Aaron in Conversations with Mother, now playing off-Broadway at Theater 555. Matt Doyle, welcome to the Theater Podcast.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. It's very strange to hear my resume read out.
It's almost as if you wrote that yourself.
Yeah, I don't think I did. I think that was left to the press team, thank God.
Oh, did the press team? Yeah. The press team sent me that. I was like, oh, that's great. I don't need to modify that at all. I'll just like change Matt to he, and there's my intro. Talk about third person. Like looking back at all of this, I mean, you said it's weird to hear it read out. Is there anything like so far that you're just surprises you that you're like, is that me?
Bye Bye Birdie. I'm like, wait, what? I did a production of Bye Bye Birdie because it was short-lived and it was early on in my career and it was a very, very strange, oddly received production. So it's just like this wild thing that kind of feels like a fever dream. Like, did that really happen? And yes, it did.
How, looking back on that, then, are you? I mean, do you remember it fondly? Like that kind of stuff, leading up to through rehearsals and tech and everything, and like as we're recording this now, you're still in previews for Conversations with Mother, so stuff could be still changing. Like until you open a show and lock it, it seems like you just can't remember your ass from a hole in the ground for the most part.
Yeah. And I have like such little memory of what I actually did in Bye Bye Birdie. I know I was Hugo Peabody, but what I remember from Bye Bye Birdie was because we knew we were in something that maybe wasn't being well received, maybe wasn't what we hoped it would be. That's usually when you have the best time with your cast because you have to come together as a family and really support one another. And I was coming straight out of Spring Awakening at the time. All of my friends had just like booked Glee, and I had a big ego and probably a big attitude, and thought that I should be certain places or doing certain things. And I was put in the adult male ensemble dressing room. And they all just kind of took me under their wing and like beat me into shape.
Well, how old are you at this point?
I was 22, I think.
I mean, you're an adult male legally.
Yeah. But like
frontal lobe wise.
Frontal lobe was not there yet. Nope, not at all. And John Tracy Egan, I'll never forget, he's so fucking amazing. Oh, excuse my language. John Tracy Egan is so amazing and was so kind to me and just like, whipped me into shape and told me to buck up and grow up and also just cared so deeply about me and made sure that I appreciated everything that was happening in my life. life and appreciated that I was a working actor at my age, and that I had a big, bright future ahead. And he really gave me the motivation and perspective I needed. And that's why that show really, I think, shifted and shaped me. It was just a great learning lesson after something so bizarre as starting your career in a show like Spring Awakening, which is just not normal, you know?
No, no, it's funny. I just released an episode a few weeks ago with Alexander Sosha. He had the same experience, right? Of just like literally like left high school early to go and skipped college, went straight into this, and then came out with this ego and had to like be checked, right? And so it's not. I tell people all the time, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So like when you got whipped into shape, was it like, yo boy, your ego's complete crap, we got to work on this? Or is it, hey, I got to tell you something?
It was really great. I think I remember that it was a room full of men who had all been leads on Broadway, and now we're grateful to be in the ensemble of this revival and playing, dads, and they all had their own lives, and they were all going home at night, and they all knew that this was work. This was 8 shows a week, and this was hard work. And I think I was just being like a little negative one day and sitting in my corner, and was just this like little dark storm cloud over my head. And I must have made some flippant comment that made John just whip around and just said, you know what? You have it so good and you don't even know it. And from then on, and that was like in tech. And from then on, I just was like, oh no, I've turned into that. No, I can't be that. That's not who I am. And so I worked really hard with them, like making sure that, I changed my perspective, and that I just was so grateful for what I had. And I was 21 and in my second Broadway show. And oh my God, what am I talking about? This is everything I ever wanted growing up. And there's nothing to be worried about. It's just taking one step at a time.
Well, that's really good on you to go what we'll call the positive route, because you could have been like, oh, well, screw you. I know better than you old fart. Like, you're a dad now. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not cool.
No, I think it was because I had such respect for these people, and I didn't want them to think negatively of me, and just to be called out was so good. But it's like you said, though, I've talked to everyone from Spring Awakening, and they have all had similar experiences right after the show. We were in this bubble and little monsters with these huge egos, and like half of us, I mean, Jen Damiano was 15 years old when she was doing that show. Like, what is that going to do to someone's mind? Like, it's so bizarre. So it was great. I mean, we all kind of look at each other now when we run into each other on the street and have those moments that you have with people from high school where you're like, you've seen me in the strangest times. Like, you cringe a little bit. You apologize for something that like happened years ago, and they're like, I don't even remember that.
Isn't that funny though? You remember something with one person or group of people that like just eats at you at the back of your head for years, decades now at this point, and you bring it up to somebody and they're like, what are you talking about?
I did it with Michael Mayer about something because, Michael was basically my drama teacher at that point, because he was for all of us. We were like his little students, and we learned from, the great Michael Mayer. And I think when I was working on Little Shop with him recently, I brought up like this one time where he like pulled me aside and like gave me a good scolding and everything. He was like, what are you talking about, Matt? I was like, Michael, you don't understand how much that scarred me for life. And he was like, I don't even know, nor do I care. You're fine.
Like, yeah, it doesn't matter at all. But when you were younger, so little Matt, your origin story, like what got you into performing? What made you attracted to the stage, or was it film, or just like being an actor in general? Like when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a film actor. And then that morphed into stage because that was the thing I could do right there in front of me in the town I grew up in.
My sister, she went to RISD for draw paint and then film as well, and she's brilliant. And my oldest sister was also an artist, and so I was kind of just in the shadow of 2 older girls that were very artistic as well. My parents, who were fiercely artistic and had very, very strong opinions on art, and I was the youngest, and I felt like I couldn't keep up with everyone. And I went through kind of like severe bullying in middle school, as a young gay man usually does. And I was looking for something that offered me a community. And I had this wonderful teacher, Marilyn Izdebski, who like swept me under her wing. And she brought me into her community theater outside of my middle school. And I met like-minded individuals, and then it was my own thing. My sisters didn't do it. My parents really didn't get it. They appreciated it because they love the arts, but they
Hmm.
had no like opinions on it. And I felt like I could just like actually blossom and succeed in it. And then I realized shortly after that, when I discovered that I loved it and I wanted to work on it, that I was actually good at it. And that was something that I just held on to. I think by like 14 or 15, I was like, well, this is what I'm doing, period. I have decided, this is going to be my career. And yeah, the bug caught me pretty early on, but honestly, it mostly came from just finding a community
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and feeling accepted and feeling like I had my own thing.
Were you out in middle school or just bullied because people were
Oh, it was
like,
just like I was the awkward, soon to be gay guy. Yeah, for sure. I went to this school that had like 8 boys in my grade. It was crazy. It was so small.
really tiny, tiny?
And they had all known each other like from childhood. And I came in sixth grade and was very different. And it did not go well, to say the least. And so but by high school, that was really good for me because the bullying was so severe. I was like knocked out unconscious a couple times. Like
Wow, like
yeah.
physical bullying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It was like now I look back on it and I'm like, holy crap. That was something else. But
Ooh, I'm
I
sorry.
yeah, oh hey, we're good. But I then went to high school, and because I had gone through that and come out on the other side of it, I would say probably way far ahead of a lot of my peers in high school in terms of, owning who I was, and I came out in high school, and a lot of people knew that I was gay, and told most of my family at a young age, like 15, 16, and I was just who I was. I was wearing the most like insane clothes just to like make a point, and I don't know.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. Physical stuff. I mean, words are one thing, physical is
Yeah.
a whole different level. And then to the point of being knocked unconscious too. And I think that that sort of answers what I was sort of getting at earlier about, when you were pulled aside in Bye Bye Birdie and you're like, that's not how I want to be. Like you have
Yeah.
the self-awareness
Yes.
that unfortunately was literally beat into you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I just wanted, I think I have a lot of anxiety wrapped around being perfect a lot. And I think that it comes from, being defeated at such a young age. You reassess constantly, like, oh, am I on the path that I want to create for myself, because you overcome something at a young age and you're like, okay, I want to do well and I want to do it perfectly and I want to succeed in all the right ways. And that also means socially too. And if somebody
Hmm.
takes you aside and says, hey, you're kind of a jerk and you're kind of, your ego is really out of control, or, I will listen, because that is like, that to me is like, oh no, I am screwing up.
Oh, well, what do you do now to kind of check in with yourself? Do you have moments where you're like, what am I doing? Is this where I want to be? When life is so hectic, especially now during previews and tech and everything, how do you keep yourself grounded?
Oh man, I just so many things. I talk a lot about my mental health, and it is a daily struggle for me. I struggle with manic depression and also severe anxiety disorder, and keeping that in check has been the balance of my entire career. And I've learned so many lessons over the years of how to make sure that I don't let it affect my work life, but also bring it into my work life. Something like Jamie and Company could never have been created if I didn't understand that kind of
Hmm.
panic and that level of anxiety. And so I'm proud of it and I embrace it in a lot of ways. But um, if I recognize that it's pushing people away, or that I'm putting my mental health onto others in a way that's unhealthy, it's really those moments that I check in with myself and just try to ground myself and check in with my family. They're my constant. They're my people. The ones that are there for you on a daily basis and that have known you since you were worrying about absurd things as a child. Are the ones that I make sure that I really connect with. And sometimes a simple trip home. My parents live in Connecticut, which is lovely. They're close enough that I can just escape for a weekend and touch base with them, and that usually is enough for me to be grounded again. And talking to my sister, who can, kind of just whip me into shape in one phone call and give me perspective, is always helpful. But it's always the constants that bring me back.
Wow. Well, then how, well, Okay, I want getting married today. The anxiety of that song, the patter song, because you mentioned company. Getting married today. I remember talking with you. It was a quick little snippet, I think, on the red carpet of company. Like it was years ago, right? And you were just like, I don't know how I'm doing it. It gives me anxiety every night. And like being now knowing more of your backstory, it seems like the anxiety of that patter song. I've done patter songs and messed them up almost every other night. So, like dealing with a diagnosed anxiety disorder, and this show in general, which has a lot of eyes because of Patti LuPone, and then gender swapping and everything that it was going through. It won the Tony for Best Revival. What were you doing at that point to keep yourself focused, not spinning out of control with anxiety for that every night? Because I know that was difficult for you 8 times a week.
Do you know what? I think the reason why I didn't spin out of control on that was one of my closest friends was directing me in that. Marianne and I got very close during Warhorse, and we kind of didn't talk for years and years. And then when we came back together in the audition room for Company, just that chemistry that we had during Warhorse, and we were drinking buddies throughout that entire production, and just like I was her, her mate, that she just hung out with as soon as rehearsal stopped, and that chemistry came back immediately. So a lot of the insecurities that happened during Company were eased by this person that was not only my mentor, but a really good friend of mine who understood me and understood my anxieties. And she was able to really guide me and calm me down. And also, I think oh God, it's so absurd to say, but I was fortunate in a lot of ways that we lived through that pandemic, because leading up to it originally, when we were supposed to open in March of 2020, I was not feeling good about my performance. And my performance also was not anywhere near where it landed 2 years later. And I think that's because all I could think about were the outside things that don't matter. What people are going to think, how they're going to compare me to Jonathan Bailey, who had just gotten all this success off of it, what the Times was going to think of me. That's when Ben Brantley was still there. And just like all of those absurd pressures that you claim you don't care about, but obviously are sitting there. What's Patty going to think of me? Like all of those things. Yeah.
Not one to withhold words.
Exactly. All of those things kind of fly out the window as soon as you live through a global pandemic, because it just gives you perspective that it's all nonsense. And we're just so lucky to be able to be doing this. And so to come back and see the entire audience in masks, just to be there supporting us and to see theater again, it pushes a lot of that anxiety aside and allows you to just relax into the fact that you actually get to perform. Oh. Now, that's not to say I didn't have anxieties. I had to do that song the night Stephen Sondheim died, and I remember like rolling out just like, don't screw this up, like, just insane. And Caroline Aaron, who I'm working with now, she asked me the other day, because she does a lot of film and TV, she goes, I mean, I get so nervous in theater. Don't you get nervous when it's like this? And I said, no. And I literally used that as an example. I said, if you roll out to do Getting Married Today the night Stephen Sondheim died on Broadway, it kind of pushes away a lot of those nerves in the future. And luckily, I didn't screw it up that night. But good. I am such a perfectionist that when I did screw it up, oh man, the tantrum I had afterwards backstage, just like I, would run up to my dressing room and cry. But that's me.
One of my old jobs, somebody got me, it was about a 3-inch by 5-inch high, 3-inch high by 5-inch wide table with like little tiny silverware and plates and drink cups and every little paper things. And so whenever I get angry, I just go and like mini flip. I'd flip the table.
Nice.
And then
I like that.
And so I have this little mini cardboard table on my desk. I'd be like, boop, I flick it, and then the cathartic part was just putting everything back on the table.
Oh my gosh,
it was really real. So I recommend that for your dressing room. I'll get you that as a dressing room gift.
Amazing,
mini table flip.
I love that.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the episode. So going back to Spring Awakening, your debut, right? Yeah. So how did that fall into your lap? Because where did you grew up in Ohio, you said?
No, I grew up in California.
I grew up in California.
So I'm originally from Massachusetts, and then my family moved out to California when I was like 12. And I was supposed to go to Carnegie Mellon for their acting program. And I kind of just panicked at the last minute because it didn't feel right. I didn't really think I was a university kid, and moving to Pittsburgh kind of scared me. So I applied to a graduate program at LAMDA, London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, like the last minute. It was like one of the last auditions you could do. I think I was already into Carnegie Mellon. I thought I was going, and they accepted me. And it was for postgrads and professionals. So I think the next, you know, youngest person there, I was 18, and the next youngest was like 23. And we had all the way up to like 45 in my class. And yeah, I decided to do that instead. And like my best friend was Parisian, and I had the most absurd year of like going to Paris on the weekends, and I came back and I had deferred from Carnegie Mellon, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna go back to school now, and no, there was no way. So I decided to stay in the city, and my parents were amazing. They were like, you can do that and you don't have to go to school, but we are not paying for you to play house in the city. So go get a job and figure it out. And I got a job as a production assistant, and I didn't have an agent. So like I just went to open calls. And I was so lucky that about a year into my auditioning in the city, there was this show called Spring Awakening moving to Broadway, and they needed unexperienced kids, you know, inexperienced kids that had never like really that were authentic and raw and sang rock and could speak, you know, semi-classical text. And I just like somehow fell right into place. And I went to the equity open call and sat on the non-equity benches to be seen, and went through about like 7 months of callbacks, and
7
finally
months
got the show. Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
a year of not getting anything.
Yep.
So you were in New York. So a year in, you auditioned, 7 months of callbacks. So are at any point are you like, what am I doing? Or are you just the
all
whole
the
time like,
all the time.
all the time? Yeah.
I reached out to Lambda like twice, like, you know, hey, could you take me back? Because I had already blown it with like Carnegie Mellon. I was like, I'll do the 2-year program now, like whatever, like wherever I can land. And they were great. They were like, yeah, absolutely, whenever you want to come back. So I did have that like in my back pocket as like possibly going back to school. So I think that was nice to know. But I also had things that were like really close calls, kind of telling me that this could still happen. I had gotten to the final callbacks of the Avenue Q national tour opposite Rob McClure. It was me and him up for it.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, absolutely absurd. And I walked into that audition, and Stephen Aremus took one look at me and just started laughing because I looked like a child. And he goes, I'm sorry, you're singing about college. How old are you? And I was like, I go, over 18. And he was like, that's all I need to know. And so he like wrote me this really sweet email afterwards. I was like, buddy, you were just too young. I'm sorry. But I got so close to that. And I thought, you know, just keep going, keep trying. And luckily the right show fell into my lap.
Rob McClure is such a jerk. I mean, terrible. Yeah.
God, I love that man so much. I can't even handle it. And he's like, he goes, I do remember like this little boy sitting in the audition wing with me. He was like, but that's all I remember. And I was like, yeah, well, I remember you.
Yeah. Well, it happened how it was supposed to work out, obviously, and it's done well for you and put you down a nice path. And then, so now, I mean, originating that, you get on Broadway. You're like, this is it. I'm the hot shit now. I'm gonna make it. Everything I auditioned for is mine. So then, after Spring Awakening, where does it go, and how many reality checks do you get beyond that point?
A lot of reality checks. There were so many things that I think I was up for, like, you know, especially at that time where Glee was happening, and a lot of like big opportunities were presenting themselves as possibilities even on that show. And there were just a lot of moments that I was like, no, that's not my path. And I kept on thinking it would be, and then it would shift, you know, overnight. I never expected Warhorse to happen. It wasn't on my radar. It wasn't something I was pushing for, and it just did. And I went to the auditions for that, and thought kind of nothing of it. And then all of a sudden, you're in this 30-something person company putting together like the most unbelievable stagecraft I'd ever seen. And I'm like, wait, what is this? How did this happen to me? And I think that's what I had to keep reminding myself as I went through that stage of my career, kind of still milking the young teen, being able to play a teenager on stage, is that you just don't know what's around the corner.
Yeah.
I remember sitting and watching Book of Mormon because Andrew Reynolds was a friend of mine, and I went to see him, and I thought, wow, that he's amazing in this. What a great show. It's so funny. And I had done a workshop of it playing like the younger brother, which was cut from it, and it was a really early workshop, but I never, because during that workshop it was Cheyenne Jackson and then it was Andrew, I never ever thought, oh, I'll do Elder Price. And then all of a sudden I'm auditioning for it, and then I'm replacing, Andrew and Nick Rouleau in it, and I was like, what? How did I end up here? It's always something that isn't on your radar, and so in all of the moments that are brutal and the losses that hurt so much, I wanted to do the Hair revival so bad, and then when they were replacing in that, I just was like devastated that it didn't happen, and just these things that I remember being like weeping over. It's just not your path. And what actually lands in your lap is something that you have not even thought about, that has not been on your radar at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it continues to be that way.
Well, how do you choose when to leave something that seems stable in this industry that is so incredibly unstable? Because like Bye Bye Birdie closes or something's a limited run or whatever the case is. But when you have something like a Book of Mormon that literally isn't stopping anytime soon, what choice what goes into your choices to be like, you know what, I'm just gonna jump without a parachute right now?
Well, and sometimes you just don't know what's going to happen, because I did do that with Book of Mormon, and they offered me, I was supposed to do a year on the road and then possibly a year in London after that. And, they wanted to continue my contract, and I very bravely said no. I had a bunch of things in the works. One of them was a show called Brooklynite, which did have a short life off-Broadway. Another show called Diner that Sheryl Crow was writing that I was a lead in. And then I had just landed the Jamie Lloyd, believe it or not, production of Back to the Future as Marty McFly. This was all canceled and canned. So when I said no,
what year was that?
That was 2000. That would have been 2015 in the West End is when they were planning on doing it. Yeah, it was
early.
Yeah. And Jamie dropped out, and then he took the book with him, and the whole thing was scrapped.
Yeah.
It was wild. And so when I left Book of Mormon, I was like, no, I feel like things are going really well. I can't do 2 more years of this show. It's going to destroy my voice if I, play this role that long, and I just can't do it. So I walked away from that, and then unfortunately, Brooklynite didn't move. Diner was canceled, and then Back to the Future was canceled, and all these things just collapsed. And that's just how it goes sometimes, and that's the risk that you have to be willing to take. Now, that being said, if I hadn't taken that move, as hard as those years were following Book of Mormon, because you go from I feel very successful, lucrative, I feel stable, to not feeling stable at all. I took the biggest reality check and stepped back in the world for my career, and I actually left the business for about a year, and I worked as a personal trainer and wrote comic books. And I thought, this is all after Book of Mormon, and I thought, I don't think I'm gonna do that again. I don't think that's gonna.
I had no idea you left.
Oh yeah, I was like, I don't think that's gonna fall into my lap again, and that's okay. I did it. That's really fun. I got to do kind of the pinnacle of it, and that's amazing. But I'm enjoying writing. It's paying the bills. This personal training thing pays more than most of my Broadway jobs have. So I was just like, great, I'm good. And out of nowhere, I got an offer to do West Side Story at Paper Mill, and to play Tony. And I'd never played Tony, and I just thought, yeah, I miss it. Why not? So I did this summer of a show that had no pressure on it to go anywhere or do anything. We were just doing West Side Story and a great production of it, lovingly. And I was reminded of this. I need this in my life. And then that led to Sweeney Todd off-Broadway. And then that led to me getting to know Stephen Sondheim, which also led to me doing Company, which is your path just, you don't know what's around the corner. And it's easy to feel so defeated after these super high moments and thinking, surely I'm making the right choice by not taking all that money and going on with Book of Mormon for 2 more years. And then I lived with regret for years, thinking oh, I just really screwed up. But I didn't, because I absolutely went on the path I was supposed to go on.
And then you're conveniently like glossing over, led to company, which led to Tony Award.
Which is absurd.
Hello.
I mean, absolutely absurd. And I just can't. I mean, I still can't believe it. And every time I hear it read or reflect back on that and what that moment was, it's really overwhelming and also so strange because the pandemic shifted everything. I mean, it was originally supposed to be. The year was going to be Danny Burstein's year that we all went into that year. Everyone that was a supporting actor that year was like, I mean, Danny Burstein's winning a Tony. Great, cool. So I don't even have to worry about this. I don't have to think about this or anything. And then that all got shifted from the pandemic. And I remember coming back after that like weird Tony thing that they did.
It was an online virtual Tony thing. Oh,
yeah. I remember coming back and just realizing like, oh, my category's totally changed. Oh, this is working out. And then, the hype started to build and I started to hear people saying things to me that I didn't want to hear. And all of a sudden you realize like, oh, I'm actually like maybe in the running for this. And it's a very strange thing to live through. Very strange and not at all on my like list of expectations that year, like at all. For me, it was just like we just get to make theater again after 2 years of not being able to. And all of a sudden, it turned into a Tony Award, which was the most surreal thing.
What was it like in the cast when you found out Sondheim had died?
It was so hard. I remember collapsing and sobbing, and I remember Clay was next to me, Claiborne Elder, and he fell to his knees as well. And I remember Patty standing tall and holding her head up. She had heard the news just about like maybe 10 minutes before us. And we were all holding hands. And the emotion was just unbelievable. It was letting out a lot of pain because what we had originally planned was to open on his 90th birthday.
Right.
And it was going to be amazing. And he was going to rise up in, there was a box with a heart in it where the priest rose up every night before getting married today. And he was going to come up in that. We were all going to sing happy birthday to him in the theater. And then this pandemic happened. And then he was there, our first preview back. And it was amazing to have him there. And he was giving us notes still and telling us stories. And he passed 5 days after that.
Yeah.
So it was just like this gut punch, one more gut punch after everything, losing him and losing this legend that we were, making. What was so beautiful about that production is how happy it made him. He just was bowled over by it and was so involved. Every single change came from him. And it was like, it felt like we were actively working with him. So to lose him in that moment was really, really tough. We certainly performed it for him every night after that. It meant so much more. If coming back from a global pandemic and bringing theater back didn't mean enough, now we were doing it for Stephen Sondheim as well. And just losing him, it was just so profound.
Yeah,
and then followed by a ridiculous Jesse Green review, and then followed by, Omicron and, this second wave of the pandemic and just like the things that show went through. We were just like, keep your chin up. Let's keep going.
Right. Well, that's one of those things where it wins the Tony for Best Revival. The audiences love it. And then literally a month after the Tonys, it closes.
Yeah. We were pushing through a lot, and our producers were amazing. I mean, Chris Harper is the loveliest man in the world, and we, luckily, nothing like this will exist now, but we got that incredible grant that was saving our stages, and we had money from that, and I think the show was surviving enough, but it wasn't making money, and I think they hoped if we make it to the Tonys and we win Best Revival, there's going to be a huge uptick. But the thing about Best Revivals is that no matter what, there's not usually a huge boost in sales, even if you win Best Revival for whatever reason. That's just kind of a thing that I've learned now from the producers in this city. And we didn't get that huge uptick, and they just knew that it was time to close it. They thought about doing a big round of, replacements and maybe trying to boost sales that way, but ending on a note that might have been sour versus ending strong with Patti LuPone and Katrina Lenk was, I think, how they wanted to go out.
And Matt Doyle.
Oh, thank you.
Tony winner Matt Doyle.
Wild. I'm still like liar. You're a liar.
I don't believe you. Not true.
That's fake.
So now fast forward and you've got a bunch of stuff. And so Tony winner, like your Tony Award is somewhere in your place.
Yeah.
And how do the offers come to you? What do you choose what you're doing now? And conversations with mother
Yeah.
is such an intimate and special story.
Yeah.
Like two-part question. How do you choose what you're doing? And how has your life changed since the Tony? And then conversations with mother. Why choose that?
Well, in some ways, I was talking, a lot of people know this, but Bonnie Milligan's my best friend, and we randomly
I love
won
Bonnie.
Tony's like one year after another, which was so strange because we've known each other for 12 years. And we have this conversation a lot where we're like, a lot changes and then absolutely nothing changes, Like, what's nice is that sometimes you get offers, sometimes you get approached to go to a final callback, but it's still all the same stuff that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and you're still in competition with everyone else. It's not like this huge shift of like, here, the world's yours now. That doesn't exist. But it's an amazing thing to have, and it certainly boosts like the concert series stuff, and being able to go to random cities across the country and do a cabaret as a Tony winner is very, very nice, and helps you through the off periods. But yeah, I mean, I still audition for a lot of things, and in the case of Conversations with Mother, it wasn't an audition; it was an offer that came to me, and I was so excited at the prospect of doing a play because first of all, I didn't study musical theater, so it's really funny that it's like my world and has fallen into my lap as much as it has. But I came back to New York thinking, I don't know, I'll do a lot of classical theater, which is hysterical to think that there's so much Shakespeare here that I was just going to have a career in classical theater.
Yeah.
But I came back and I never really got to do that many plays. I did War Horse, and so this was a really exciting opportunity for me for that alone. And then I read the script, and within the first 10 pages, I was hooked just because I know this woman, I know this family, and I wanted to do something light right now. I mean, it is such a dark time that we're living in, and right after the election, my father said to me, "That's it. I'm turning off CNN. I'm turning off the news, and we have to start connecting more." And he's made such an effort to do so. And he was like, "It's family that matters. It's
Good
just
for
family
him.
that matters. That's what's going to get us through the next 4 years, no matter what goes on. It's family that matters. We have to reconnect." And he's been very motivated about that. And I thought, as I was reading it, it was such a nice reflection of that. I wanted to do something that was just about human connection and about family, and something that would make people laugh and hopefully cry. And it was so touching, and I was so grateful that I was getting like a straight offer. I felt very fancy, and and then I heard I was being paired with Caroline Aaron, and I was such a huge fan of hers, and love Maisel and love her work in so many different things. I told her the other day, I was like, "You're in my favorite movie, and you play a really, really small part, but it's Big Night, which is Stanley Tucci's first film that he directed, and it is so good, and she's so brilliant in it. She has like one scene as a customer who doesn't understand Italian food, and she's brilliant, and I love her.
I love
And
seeing
so
Steelers like that.
yeah,
It's great.
yeah. So I was just so thrilled to work with her, and it's been a joy. I mean, it's just been exactly what I needed right now, and just gets better and better. I think the audience's reaction and how positive the reaction's been so far has not surprised us, but thrilled us. I mean, you never know. And so we're so grateful that people are connecting with it the way they are, and that it's been received so well.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the episode. Well, Matthew Lombardo, the playwright, I met him through the industry, 5-6 years ago now at
Yeah.
this point. It's been a while. And I knew that even back then he was working on this.
Yeah.
And to see it now be on stage and being performed by two amazing performers such as you and Caroline. Using Caroline's.
Using Caroline.
Using Caroline's. I'm happy for him, happy for you, happy for everybody. It's such an incredible show. I saw it the other day. And for me, having my own sort of tumultuous relationship with my mother,
Yeah.
my parents in general, but my mother specifically, hit home in a way like exactly what you said just now of like family is everything. You can kind of be at odds with somebody, but deep down I guess it goes back to what I said earlier. It's not what you say, it's how you say it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
still trying to help them understand that they need to say things a little bit differently to get the same message across, right?
Yep.
But like, yes. So for you, your parents, your mother, even like your siblings, right? It's
Yeah.
all immediate family. Are you pulling anything out of this show personally that you're allowing yourself to like include in your normal life?
Absolutely. The biggest thing, I mean, I love that the show addresses not just the relationship between mothers and sons or mothers and daughters and just the connection that we have with our mothers, but also a very, very specific relationship, which is a mom and a gay son. And that
Yeah.
is something that we don't see a lot of media around. You know, there's some things, but just to embrace it and really just understand it, it's on another level that my sisters always talk about that they just don't get. You know, like, I don't understand how mom has so much patience with your bullshit. and yet I can't even, get away with this. And I think it's because there is not only am I her son and her youngest and everything, but we have this connection that is because I had to share something so personal and so scary at such a young age, we started telling each other things that were so much more intimate than my sisters ever thought about talking about with my mom. And it starts at a really young age, especially if you come out to your mom really young. And the story really explores that. And I love that the gay element of our show, it's not a thing. It's
That's
not
what I was
like,
going to say. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah,
it's
not a
not
plot
something
point.
she has to work through as an Italian Catholic. No, she finds out about it, but that's not the issue. Their relationship and what they learn from one another is completely separate from that.
Yeah,
And
unrelated.
yeah, and I love that. I love that, especially right now. I love that that's not like we're not making this show about like accept your son for being gay. No, that's you should. That's beside the point, you know.
That's the foundational basics.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's what I was going to say about this. Sorry to interrupt you. That
No, please.
Caroline's character, the mother character, she's so critical and she's so in the son's business and just wants the best and is one of those like hands-on, I'm going to tell you everything you need to do with your life to make it the best life it can be sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then being gay is never an issue. It's never questioned.
Nope.
It's never a plot point. It's just like, yeah, he's my son. I don't care.
Yep.
I don't care who he's having sex with as long as he's safe about it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And and so I pulled a lot from that because it was very similar. You know, my mom struggled at first because she was scared about certain things like HIV, like how my father was going to react, all these different things. But ultimately, my mom was my fiercest supporter. And then the biggest thing that keeps coming up in my life is because I'm an artist, I seek validation in my work and I seek validation from other places. And I don't honor my own self-worth a lot. And it's something that I really, really struggle with on a daily basis. That new relationship of mine, it's something that like rears its head again, and I have to examine and really understand. And there's just this wonderful moment in the show where she talks about my character constantly chasing the thing, and that the thing is never the thing, and that until you recognize your own self-worth and stop seeking it in other places and other guys and other plays or whatever you think it's going, wherever you think your satisfaction is going to be somehow, until you actually find it within yourself, you're never going to be happy. And the play really explores that, and it's a beautiful message, and one that I like try to listen to every night myself.
I need to just take that in myself. You're right.
Yeah.
Like it's chasing the thing. It's like as soon as you get there, I forget to look back. And I reference this a lot. Andre DeShield's acceptance speech when he won his Tony.
Yeah.
He said, what was he in the 70s, late 60s, 70s when he won his Tony, right?
Yeah.
And he's going on about how grateful he is. And he's like, just don't forget to turn around and look back to see where you've come from, because the top of one mountain is the bottom of the next.
Yep.
And just you gotta keep going. You keep climbing, but don't forget to turn around and see how far you've come.
Yep.
And
I've talked to
appreciate
so
that
many
for a second.
people, post Tony win, and I've had the fortunate situation of being able to talk to other Tony winners, and most of them will tell you, oh yeah, the most depressing year of my life was the year right after, just because you reach this peak that you always like envisioned and thought was like impossible, magical, somehow like there lies happiness, and then you get there and you're like, oh, okay, so nothing really changed, like it's a very surreal thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's true of any business and any success that we come across. I remember feeling the same way when I made my Broadway debut, like, oh, so now it's work. Oh, so it's not this like fantasy that you get to like, now you still have to do your job every day, but be grateful for it and recognize what you have. It's always a balancing act.
I think about the one lyric from Hamilton quite frequently, actually. I imagine death so much it feels more like a memory. And I kind of equate that to making my Broadway debut, which I have never done. I've never officially been paid to perform on a Broadway stage. And soon, one day, I will enter it into this world. But I've had numerous anxiety dreams.
Yeah.
About making a Broadway debut. And I literally, one of them was Hamilton. More often it's Moulin Rouge, where I'm in the audience. They call 5 minutes before curtain. They're like, Alan Seales, please come to the stage door. And so, vaudevillian accent. And so I go around the side and they're like, you're on as ensemble number 3. Go. And I'm like, where's my costume? I don't know any lines. I never had any rehearsal. They're like, we don't care. Figure it out. And so that's my memory, my imaginary memory of making debut is this hugely full of anxiety moment.
Right.
That now I'm not even sure if I want anymore because it's so stressful.
Yeah. I mean, but it is great. I promise. You'll get there. Oh my God. But it's also like, it is such a nice lesson. I teach a lot now, and I have a lot of kids, ask me how to get on Broadway, just specifically how to get on Broadway. And I'm like, well, is that something that like you genuinely want to do? The 8 shows a week in New York, living in New York, paying New York money. Yeah. When you're not really making enough money to live in New York. And like, do you want, like, make sure that is something that like you want, like you genuinely want for yourself, not just like, I want to achieve that so that I can put that feather in my cap and say, ha ha ha, I made it to Broadway, like, because that won't provide you joy or satisfaction if that's all you're seeking, I promise you, because it gets real, and then you're doing 8 shows a week. And also, like, be proud of your community's theater. If you live in a city that has great theater, be a big fish in a small pond, like that's also really satisfying and thrilling. And you don't need to be on Broadway to find, joy and happiness in the performing arts.
Yeah, I agree. It's why do you want to perform? Why do you want to be on Broadway specifically? And that why is going to tell you who you are and help you find your self-worth. Because you're right. People may be totally happy just doing community theater their whole life. Not knocking community theater.
No,
just talking
please.
about on the professional scale. Right.
I have so many friends that moved to Seattle, that moved to Chicago, and they're like, I am so much happier here. Like, my life just changed, and I work year round, and I have a community that I know and love that never changes, and this is what I needed,
Yeah, I talk to Caitlin Kinnanen every now and then from the
I love her.
And she moved to Seattle, and she's based out of Washington, somewhere in Washington. Yeah. But she's just working year round and so happy. So yeah, you're exactly right. And I know people from Raleigh, Durham, where I'm from, that just they choose to stay there and they're based out of that. And every now and then they'll come up here and do something maybe, but they enjoy themselves so much.
Yes.
And cost of living is stupid cheap compared to New York.
Exactly.
Obviously. So real quick before we wind down, talk to me about Sinatra the musical for a minute. You made your West End debut recently.
Yeah. It was so thrilling. I mean, this is so surreal. It's funny because, look, I know everybody knows me as a tenor with an Irish last name, and I think at first people were like,
Doyle.
Yeah, people were like, wait, what's happening? I am half Italian, all right? And I also loved the idea that people were like, yeah, they cast a guy as Sinatra that they're going to change the keys for. No, that's not happening. But I went in and I was so excited to go in for it. And I reached out to Kathleen Marshall and I said, I really want to be seen for this. And she was like, really? Okay, interesting, And my agent made sure I was seen for it. And so I auditioned for it. And Kathleen was thrilled and was like, come back tomorrow. Tina Sinatra is going to be here. And so I auditioned for the estate and Universal Music and Tina Sinatra. And Tina, I remember, like, dropped her water bottle when I started singing. And I could see her whispering the entire time to who I now know as Michelle Anthony, who's like one of the CEOs of Universal Music. And I left the room, and within like 10 minutes, I had a phone call from Kathleen Marshall, and she was like, "Hi, honey, you need to meet us at Orso right now." And I was like, "Oh, Orso, the restaurant in Midtown?" I said, "I have to go to Little Shop of Horrors." And she goes, "Well, you have an hour, and you're going to have dinner with Tina Sinatra." And I was like, "Okay." So I went and got to sit down with Tina, and she told me stories that I never even imagined hearing, especially in my first hour of meeting her. And she's an open book. She's the most generous, wonderful woman in the world. And then she toasted to me and welcomed me to the family. So she made me the offer way before anyone else had said anything. And it was just wild. And then I walked back in and played Seymour Krelborn, which was a very different role to suddenly put on. But it's been so thrilling diving into Frank. And, I know this man. I watched this man. He's every one of my uncles. He's my dad, and I kind of just sat in the corner and watched him growing up. So it's fun to be able to take on a physicality and a persona that, is not necessarily central to who I am, but in terms of young Frank's motivations and passions and yearning, I really connect with that. And the show tells a story of just young Frank from 19 to 38. And a lot of people don't know this, but he had a massive downfall when he first moved to Hollywood. And he kind of got tied up in this huge tabloid ring with Ava Gardner, and he was cheating on his wife constantly. And so the story is really about his early years and how destructive they were. And that he fought tooth and nail. And it was actually the women supporting him, his wife, Nancy, and Ava, that really brought him back and gave him, the platform and the career that he ended up having, and the fight and the drive that he had. And we use music from his entire career to tell the story, but it's fascinating. I mean, a lot of people don't know that he attempted suicide multiple times, that he was performing in basements in New York after, literally having billing over Gene Kelly and Anchors Away. And it's amazing. I've discovered so much. I hear new stories from Tina every day. I get texts from her all the time. I got one from her last night, and I was so happy. And it's just so surreal. I mean, my grandmother growing up had the Pope, JFK, and Frank Sinatra on her wall, and that's like he was God, So right. To think that I get the opportunity to play him, and I think I was chosen because I don't necessarily impersonate him. I do his phrasing, and I do a lot of his intonations, but I'm not, I'm not a Vegas impersonator, just like trying to do the best Frank I can. It's still me and my character of Frank Sinatra, and developing that and finding the right balance of that has been really amazing. And to be given, I don't know, just like the permission to do that from the estate and from Tina, and supported in the way that she's been supporting me is thrilling. And I think it'll be on Broadway next season. That's what I'm like allowed to say.
I was about to ask.
Yeah.
If you're still getting texts from Tina, who is Frank Sinatra's daughter, by the way, for those listening at home. If she's still texting you as of last night, I was going to say, so what's the plan?
Yeah. The plan is we had an amazing reading at the Apollo this winter, where we presented it with a full orchestra, and we're able to just, make sure that all of the American money was there, because we just want to bring it to a Broadway stage. But I am so grateful, and as long as these things can feel like they have a few theaters in mind. They don't want to be in the wrong house. They want to do it right. They don't want to blow it and go to the wrong house, or something too small, something too big, and close, and that happens with so many shows. So they're being really careful about it, because it's the Frank Sinatra musical, and you get one swing at it. And so I think they're just being careful and taking their time. But it looks very promising that we'll be in the next Broadway season. And
cool. You said it takes place from 19 to 30, 34, 38?
38, yeah.
38. That's exactly World War I to World War II.
Yes.
Sandwich between the wars.
Yes, yeah. No, a lot is changing in the world at the time. I mean, it's what he had to change in his career, too, is he couldn't sing these, like, these sappy ballads anymore that all the girls wanted when he was this teen sensation, when he first started out and was performing at the Paramount. But things got real, and he didn't go to war because he genuinely couldn't, because of his eardrum. He had a perforated eardrum, and he was rejected twice, and everybody tried to, like, claim that, he dodged the war, he wanted to go. then his music had to change as a result of that because people were craving different music and he couldn't fit into this kind of, Mitch Miller, honky tonk vibe that was happening and coming into the scene. And it wasn't until he met Nelson Riddle and started working at Capitol Records that his music career really launched again. But it was his acting career that thrust him back into the spotlight because he begged and demanded to be a part of From Here to Eternity, which is the film that won him his first Oscar. So that's the story that we tell. All of that. Everything I just touched on.
I had no idea. No idea. I cannannot wait to see this.
It's really exciting. And God, the music's so great. And then we're going to have, his setup. We're going to have a full big band, and it just blasts your face off. And the way it tells this story is so exciting because you go from one moment where I'm singing about Ava Gardner in a narrative way, singing I've Got You Under My Skin, which is perfect lyrically. And then, the big band rises up behind me, a microphone rises up, and I'm singing it to her in a nightclub in Houston, Texas, which did happen, and she came to. And that's how we make those transitions, and it's just perfect for it. I mean, this is the American Songbook, so it doesn't feel like a jukebox musical. It feels, these are songs that are so narrative and can fall into any scenario, and they just work.
Well, fingers crossed it comes
Thank you.
soon.
Thank you so much.
You sold it to me.
I'm very excited about it. And if it takes another couple years, which I don't think it will, I think it will be next season. When it happens, it will be right. So I can't wait.
Cool. All right. So then we will shift over to our little closing game and then questions. The game is Plot in 60 Seconds. So I have a list of 16 popular musicals. And you give me a list. You give me a number 1 through 16. It will correspond to a show on my list. And then you give me that plot in 60 seconds.
Okay.
So 1 through 16.
8.
8 is Rent. Go.
Oh my gosh. Rent. Rent is about two guys. Their names are Roger and Mark, and they can't pay the rent because they're artists and they live in the Lower East Side. And it turns out that Roger has AIDS, and a lot of people have AIDS, and it's this awful pandemic and epidemic that the city is dealing with, and we learn everyone's humanity through dealing with this horrible thing. And these are real people, real characters living in New York City at the time that you should get to know and should love. People that are trans, people that are cross-dressers, people that are gay, bi, lesbian, all the things. And it's a show about love and making sure that you hang on to every single moment in your life and live in the moment instead of dreading the future and dreading what's to come. And it's a show about embracing the people around you instead of the daily struggle of trying to make it in New York City, but the community that you have in New York City. Bam.
Boom. And Tay Diggs wants your rent.
Yeah.
2.
I did it.
1.
You did it. Okay, cool. No mention of ID.
I'm so glad I got rent.
But it's all right. It's all right. What's that?
I said, I'm so glad I got rent.
Let's see. Company was number 14. You could have had Company.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I don't know what I would have said about that.
You could have just done the Patter song, the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Getting married today. All right. So the 3 standard closing questions. First one simply is just what motivates you?
Oh, man. What motivates me? I think what motivates me the most is the fact that we have one shot at this and that your world could change at any second, and to just continue to explore and invest in as many things as possible, because you never know what's right around the corner. And that life, as something as tragic as Gavin's passing this past year has shown us, life can change at any single moment. And we're so lucky. We're so lucky to be here doing what we're doing.
You'd be getting notes from somebody and 5 days later they're gone.
Yep.
Yeah. What advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path, which you think it kind of answered a little bit earlier?
Yeah, I think especially like the 19-year-old just moved to the city, Matt, calm the hell down. Like, you need to relax. I still say that to myself. I still need that advice on a daily basis. But that kid, he was a neurotic mess. And I wish that I could go back every now and then and just be like, it's okay. Like, take your time, pace yourself. You're going to be okay.
Yeah. All right. So if you can only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
Oh, man. It's shifted so much over the years. One show?
One show.
One show? Oh, man. I think it would probably be Sweeney Todd now.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to fall on Sweeney Todd now. Or Sunday. It's a Sondheim show for sure. Yeah. Sunday in the Park with George might be up there too.
Those are two very popular answers. So
Yeah.
you're in good company.
Okay, good.
All right. Where can we connect with you online on social media?
Oh, you can connect with me online on Instagram. I got the Matt F. Doyle at Instagram. I'm on Blue Sky too, but I don't use it. I don't know. And I'm not on X. That's a horrifying place now. Yeah, look for me on the Instagram. I also do cameos.
All right. Yeah. Look for me. Do my vaudeville Frank Sinatra. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right. So you can get more of me at Theater_podcast on Threads, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on the Facebook. Leave a rating and review wherever you're listening. Thanks to Jukebox the Ghost for the intro and outro music. And thanks to Matt frickin' Doyle for this conversation. That's what the F stands for.
That's what the F is. Yeah.
Yeah. Matt frickin' Doyle. Thanks, man. It was so good to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.